Ayo, Dapper Dan, Gucci display, my biggest Trump screaming murder. This is a video about the new Mac Miller album, Balloonerism. So this is the fourth album to be posthumously released by Mac Miller's family, and this one was recorded about 10 years ago from around 2014 to 2015, and apparently was recorded in the span of like a week, just when this huge burst of inspiration hit Mac Miller, almost like The Unseen by Quasimodo. Mac Miller's an artist I've actually had some trouble getting into over the past couple years. I always thought he was a super creative artist who has a lot of personality in his music, but I just always felt like he was missing something. Some of his albums leaned too far towards pop, and others were just really messy, but overall I just felt like he wasn't really utilizing his full potential. But on this record, he does everything almost perfectly. It's a near perfect album. The content matter of the album is kinda all over the place, like Faces. He touches on a lot of topics like relationships, his day-to-day life, drug use, and mostly I felt like the album at its core was about Mac Miller's childhood leaving him. Throughout the whole thing, I always felt this huge wave of dread and apathy, like he wishes he could go back. He was only about 22 when he was making this album, and his career was just hitting its first upward stride, and because of that, I feel like the reality of being an adult was just starting to catch up with him, and I think he illustrates that best on the song Excelsior. With this backdrop of a dreamy, piano-backed instrumental and fluid lyrics describing the scene of kids playing on a playground, I think it paints this really somber picture of missing the past but also being afraid of the future. To me, Mac Miller's music was never like overly depressing, but there'd always be this pretty prominent undertone of sadness and unsureness. But on this album, I always feel this impossible rolling sadness. I think he sums up that feeling of sadness and hopelessness best with the lyrics on the song Rick's Piano, where he says, "I wonder if the blind mice even want to see. I wonder if a deaf father ever hear his daughter scream. Is there a heaven? Can you see the God in me?" And at the end of this song, he repeats, "What does death feel like?" over and over again. I think the way he uses his words to craft vague illustrations and uses a lot of non sequiturs to convey this hopeless, scattered experience works really well. The whole album has a more psyched out sound with a lot of dreamy pianos and more progressive instrumentals that creates this vibe, being less focused on lyrics and more so just on atmosphere throughout the album. And speaking of it, the holy mother of all atmospheres opens up this album, DJ's Chord Organ. Featuring vocals from SZA, it starts off with these really tinny, hollow-sounding keys that morph into this beautiful song with angelic singing from Mac Miller and SZA. The chords in this song feel like they actually reach into my soul and take something with them, and it just sounds really depressing. Most of the songs just feature pretty normal Mac Miller stuff, chill-ish rapping over these jazz-adjacent beats with silly stuff thrown throughout, but overall I feel like the album has a much more refined coat of paint, better hooks, better beats, etc. Basically fixing all the issues I have with Mac Miller that I mentioned at the start. In a weird sort of way, this album kind of mirrors itself, with the song that opens the album, DJ's Chord Organ, being that spacey, hazy song that features no rapping. And the outro is this 12-minute long, dark, ambient, harrowing song called Tomorrow We'll Never Know that features Mac Miller singing in this really flat and sedated tone that at times sounds closer to a spoken word throughout the song. The last half of this song just loops these spacey atmospheric chords over drums that are mixed really low. They sound like they're so far away, and all of that creates this just really dead and depressive sounding song. It, to me, sounds like watching a dead animal corpse. It literally feels like you're decomposing. The whole thing is really just so amazing, but it's also just really sad to hear on like a surface level, just with the fact of him being dead, but also with the songs themselves, how much weight they carry and how much passion was obviously put into them at this time in Mac's life. And overall, I'm just really glad we got to hear this so long after it being recorded. Rest in peace, Mac Miller.